There was something so pleasant about that place. Even your emotion had an echo in so much space. When you out there without care, I was out of tune. But it wasn't because I didn't know, no. I just knew too much. Does that make me crazy? Does that make me crazy? Does that make me crazy? Possibly. I hope that you're having the time of your life. Think twice. That's my only advice.
Hello, everybody. It's a beautiful Thursday evening. I wanted to catch you before we watch the news, and I'm about to leave the office here in a few minutes. But before I do, I thought I'd jump on here very quickly and share something with you that's been on my heart last several hours. And I know that I think this is a very important topic, very important issue to discuss. And before I get into that, though, please tell me in the comments. I love to begin with asking you if you can hear me and if you can see me. If I'm loud and clear, tell me. If I am clear in this broadcast, please tell me that I'm loud and clear so that we can get this proverbial show on the road. A few shout outs to you, and keeping in mind we only have a few minutes before the news, but I wanted to get this in there. Kole Chanda says, loud and clear. You're loud and clear. Thank you so much. Before I get into my little dissertation, let me just very quickly say that, reading today's Facebook pages has really left me a bit nonplussed, because I'm reading about people murdering people. There's a story on the internet now that a young man was burnt to death while he was asleep in his house. A group of young guys had got into some type of altercation with the victim, and in an effort to retaliate, in an effort to met out retribution, these young men burnt this guy alive, literally just burnt him alive until he was dead. And I read that story and I thought to myself, what type of people are we becoming? Another story that's swirling around on the internet is the one that talks about a group of young men that stabbed to death another young man. I mean, these are two groups, these are two gangs, two rival gangs that don't get along. They don't like each other. And in the midst of some type of conflict, one of the guys from this gang stabbed another guy from this other gang and left a young man dead in a pool of blood. The police are telling us that they have some suspects in custody, and that's great. But what is more disconcerting, what is more worrisome, is that we are now beginning to hear and read these stories more and more and more. And it makes me ask the question, what's happening to our youth? What's happening to our nation? Are we raising a bunch of wolves? Are we raising children that have no sense of humanity? Are we raising young people that have no sense of the value of life, that you would find it okay in your mind to gang up with your friends and decide, let's go burn that house with our enemy in that house and let's watch him burn to death? Are we that jaded? Are we that vile? Are we that seared? You know, do we have such a seared mind, such a skewed mind that you would think such a thing? Are we so corrupted in our spirit and so dark in our hearts that we can look at somebody else and say, because I don't like you, I'm going to pull out a gun, I'm going to pull out a knife and stab you and watch you bleed and die to death? What type of people are we raising? That's concerning. That really worries me. It makes me sit and wonder, what type of generation are we raising? God help us. Help us. God help us. All right. I wanted to very quickly ask you this question. Are we winning the war on drugs? The answer is no. Let me explain why. You know, the big fish never get arrested. The big fish never get arrested. I will sit here and tell you now. I mean, one of the things that I learned while I was in prison was, and many of you know, I went to prison for 6 days. The reason I went there was because a young man had accused me of slashing his tires, a bus driver slashing his tires, and he demanded 5,000 kwacha from me, and I said, I'm not going to do that because I didn't do that. We went to court. The judge saw it differently. The judge found me guilty, sent me to 6 months in jail, and we appealed, and I'm out on bail pending appeal. So that's the reason I'm sitting here with you here now. The case is not over yet. We're still in the long haul. But here it is. While I was in prison, I spoke to many people, some murderers, some rapists. I spoke to one young guy that went by the name of Tolo. That's not his real name. That's his, not stage name, but his prison name. And he shared with me something that I found so interesting that I feel it incumbent upon me to share it with you. And I think the general public deserves to know what's going on. And as far as what's happening in the war against drugs in this nation. Now, let's be clear. It is possible now. We are now living in an environment where if you get a license to grow medical marijuana, and I think the license costs about $200 some odd $1,000. It's about $230,000, $250,000. If you pay that license, you can legally grow, sell, and export what they call medical marijuana, meaning there are people out there, people that consume it for medical purposes. Apparently, marijuana has some type of medicinal quality in it. Okay, so from a legal point of view, if you really want to go into that sort of thing, I mean, if that's your thing, you have to cough up $250,000. And then, of course, it's not just a matter of walking up and showing up with $250,000. There's a whole process. There's a gamut of things that you have to do in order to obtain that license to operate and to do those things. But while I was in prison, I met a young man that said to me, he explained to me that he had been arrested because he was transporting marijuana. And the way they do it is that there's a little tiny village in Impika, Kumpikakuria. There's a village there that all they do is grow marijuana. In fact, the Drug Enforcement Commission apparently is not allowed to go there. The Drug Enforcement Commission does not have leeway to go there. The DEC does not have any type of jurisdiction there, which is amazing to me because when he was narrating the story to me, I was thinking, what is this? Why wouldn't DEC go there? I mean, we operate and live under a set of rules, laws, and regulations. We do have a constitution. But this young man said to me, oh no, this village that grows marijuana, that's all they do. DEC doesn't go there. But here's the thing. When you go to harvest and to get marijuana and you put it in sacks, huge sacks, he said that I was transporting about 12 sacks of marijuana. And the way they do it is when the truck leaves Mpika, this village, they pretend they're transporting potatoes. Okay, what they do is that they get one of these flatbed trucks. They sort of sprinkle chlorine on the surface of the flatbed truck. Then they spread a thick plastic sort of blanket on the flatbed truck, and then they place potatoes on the first layer of the flatbed truck, and then they conceal these sacks and sacks and sacks and sacks of marijuana on top of the potatoes. And then finally, the last layer on top of the truck is a layer of potatoes. And then, of course, they put a tarp, like a big plastic cover. So whenever a truck is being transported from Pika, coming through to Lusaka and on its way to Livingston and other parts of the country and all that, the marijuana is concealed in the middle of that haul. The haul meaning HAUL, the haulage, the cargo. Okay. And sometimes the police catch you, sometimes they don't. And this young man said something to me that was so interesting, and I want to share it with you. He said to me, the big fish never get caught. The big fish never get arrested. It's the guys in between, the guys, the chola boys, the guys that run the errands, the guys that literally transport the marijuana. He said, we make a lot of money, but the problem is once we're caught, the law is never easy on us. He said, on one hand, you can make, he said, in that one haulage, he said, one time I delivered all these drugs to a white guy. He said, white person. He said, this guy, the deal is we get the stuff from Mpika, we come through, we transport the drugs to a white man. I don't know where the white man was or who he is. And that man pays us cash money, sometimes 30, sometimes 40,000 kwacha, right there on the spot. And the more we do it, he said, the more accustomed we become to having lots and lots and lots of money. But the problem with that lifestyle, he said, that it's great when you're making the money. The only problem is when DEC catches you and you're sentenced, the sentence is quite heavy. You know, so you have to make the decision. Do you go that route, risk everything? I mean, the young man's doing 15 years in prison for such a huge consignment of drugs. I mean, he had sacks and sacks of it, you know. And so the question is, are we winning the war on drugs? And of course, the answer is no, because the big fish never get arrested. The only people that get arrested are these guys that are doing the transporting, these guys that are trading in, 5 kilos, 10 kilos, 15 kilos worth of drugs. But the big boys, the source is not being touched, and the big boys are not being touched. It's these kids in between that are being sent to prison. Do you see the dichotomy? Do you see where the problem is? Therein lies the conundrum. As long as you're not arresting the big fish, as long as you're not putting a stop from the source, and as long as you're sort of allowing the big fish at the end to escape, as long as you're doing that, we will never win the war against narcotics. We will never win the war against illegal, illicit drugs. We will never win the war against marijuana. It'll never be won. So we have to realign ourselves, and if we're serious about it. So, but let me tell you, and I say this quite frankly and quite honestly, we have a huge problem in this country. We do, and the problem is, the drug cartels that are running these drug lines are so huge that they're a bit overwhelming. to be frank and honest with you. There really are. And the only people that get caught, and rightly so, are the little kids in between. But if you can put a stop to the source, okay, assuming the source doesn't have a license, because apparently the village in Pika, they don't have a license. This village grows marijuana. That's all they do. That is their source of income. That is their thing. They do that from the moment they wake up to the moment they go to bed. That is all they do. As long as you're not tackling that, and as long as you're not going to the end user, who is the big fish, the big buyers, if you're not touching the big boys, but you're only arresting the kids in between, you will never win the war on drugs. All right. Thought I'd share that with you. Somebody says you're disclosing the secrets of cheese. Really? You think that's disclosing? That's in prison, that's normal, that's common knowledge. And DC knows this. They know this very well. They really do. All righty. I don't want to hold you up. You need to watch the news, and I'll see you guys tomorrow. Good night. Bye.